Well, hello, and welcome back to Read Becca. It's time once again for my weekly chatty catch-up on everything I've read, everything I'm currently reading, and everything I'm looking forward to reading for roughly the current week, as well as some general lifey chit-chat. So this week I read 2 books, and I liked both of them, I think, but the first one is not going to be memorable long-term, I doubt. So that first one is Simon Brett's A Messy Murder, from the Declutter series. This is the 4th novella. They're very short. And I keep going back to this series because I do enjoy them, but there are so many things that I don't love about them. And this one was, I think, moving forward from a lot of the things I have not liked, how heavy and on top of the reader they are. But it felt very inconclusive because this was so much more character focused, which is what I've really, really liked about this series. So that's kind of a contrast. In this particular story, Ellen, our declutterer, who runs her own business in England, is onboarding a new client, more or less, a couple, one of whom, the husband, is a very, very famous British TV presenter and interviewer. And he, shortly after she is hired, she finds him dead, and beside him is an article that he wrote in his youth, more or less talking about the virtues of the elderly, voluntarily shuffling off of this mortal coil at age 80, and making the argument for the positives of that. So obviously it's perceived that he has just had his 80th birthday and he wrote this article in his youth. This is a note, and he has taken his own life. But Ellen, over the course of the series, now has a reputation for being an amateur sleuth to some degree. So the widow, her new client, kind of says, well, this doesn't seem like him. It seems a little suspicious. Can you look into this? And so Ellen naturally starts looking into it, and to the title, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, she does find some nefarious things and very suspicious elements to what has happened. So there is the murder aspect, and that is played out very well. I enjoyed the murder, but what I keep coming back to for the series is the human interactions that she has with her ongoing clients, or even people who were past clients that she just keeps up with. She keeps going to see them once a week because they were hoarders, and she wants to check in on them and see how they're doing and make sure they're mentally doing well and continuing to strive and have success. And so there's that aspect that I love, but then her personal relationships also really shine in this, in that she has this very contentious relationship with her mother, who's really demanding, who's a former actress that has waning popularity in her old age and doesn't want to admit it, a bit of an alcohol problem. So that's a really conflict-ridden relationship. And then she has an unusual relationship with her 2 adult children, one of whom has just moved in with her. Both of her adult children have been through a lot in past stories, and so we're kind of seeing them both step off into new frontiers, new challenges they're facing in their lives for the positive, it seems. So we have those relationships, and I loved returning to those as prominent aspects of this book. We also have kind of a subplot with her sort of odd jobs man, Dodge. He's around, he's very quiet, he seems very sympathetic, and you definitely want to get behind him as a character, but he's really secretive, so we don't know a ton about it, Dodge. We've uncovered a little bit in the previous book, but here, someone is stealing from Dodge, and it's kind of questionable. Why would they be stealing this? He has piles and piles of stuff as a result of being the odd jobs man. Everything goes to him that sort of Ellen can't give away to charity or wouldn't find some other use for, because Dodge has a knack for transforming things or taking things apart and reusing their parts in ways that you wouldn't think of maybe, or using them to repair other things. So he can get the most out of these items, but now somebody's stealing from his junk. Why would they be doing that? And so there is this minor subplot of theft, investigation, mystery to this that I found kind of the most delightful part of this. So everything does feel a little at loose ends, except for the murder mystery. We definitely do get that tidily wrapped up. But all of the other elements, in terms of her family and what's going on with all the people in her life, feels like it's left fairly open-ended, and like we will be continuing on with the series. So while nothing about this really hit hard, other than the kind of the premise, I would say the over 80 premise really reminded me of a book that I've read and loved, and is a much better take on this, is Boomsday by Christopher Buckley. This is kind of loosely inspired by A Modest Proposal, but more or less a kind of modern take, very satirical, where a woman sort of accidentally gains massive political popularity on the premise of, yeah, we should have boomers should be incentivized by the government to go for euthanasia, more or less. Move along, let the next generation take over. It's very funny and very sort of in your face with the premise. It doesn't shy away from it, and it's a really good book, and this kind of made me want to really reread it. But it's such a minor element to this. But yeah, A Messy Murder. I've continued to enjoy the series, but this was not a standout book by any means. From there, I went to a memoir, Accidentally on Purpose by Kristen Kish, and I did the audiobook, which is narrated by herself. And it was a very good memoir. I say, as far as the audio goes, she does a great job of reading the book, and wonderful job of presenting it, but it does feel read. So this is one of those like where it's a very good celebrity audiobook, but it's not a professional narrator, clearly. Like, it doesn't have that casual conversational vibe to it. You can tell it's being read, but she does a great job of it. So I enjoyed that a lot. I enjoyed how much this covered. This was not just anecdotes from her professional life and stardom. This was a pretty encompassing memoir. So we're getting a linear, for the most part, story of all the way from her early days as a very young child coming to the US as an adoptee from South Korea, her experience of growing up in Michigan and feeling very loved, accepted, and supported, despite the circumstance that had she experienced in most other areas or most other families would have been a very different experience for her. But she is clear all throughout, like, just how much support she got from her parents over the course of the entirety of her life, regardless of what has happened, even up to the end of the memoir when she is jumping into talking about her avenues into hosting Top Chef and these great big successes, and feeling that same level of support as minor struggles in her youth. So starting with this lovely family environment and feeling very supported, to teenage years and sort of lashing out and not really knowing why, and the family kind of trying to process this. And again, that supportiveness led to her winding up in therapy for eating disorder that she didn't have. She was just extremely tall and lanky and thin, and so everyone sort of assumed that was what was going on because she wasn't talking about it. And her perception of herself at that time is that a lot of it was internalization of her being closeted. Despite all of the support, the world was not in a place where she felt like she could openly be gay or even be open to herself acting on that. And so she was, continuing to progress, portraying herself as a straight person and be closeted into her adulthood. So she also then goes into, from her teens, a modeling career. She wanted to do international business and started down that path in college, and then just kind of dropped it and walked away and became a chef. And that's so fascinating because she basically took something that, as a teenager, she worked at one of those mall pretzel shops, basically. And that was something that she felt she really loved and poured herself into. And that grew into her being an actual chef, sort of sideways. And I loved that trajectory for her. It was really cool because she has so many options. I mean, going from being a model and having all of these presenter skills that have served her now as well, and the business side of things that she was looking at, and seeing how all of those different facets of her became this TV presenter, host, chef that she is now was so cool. So from there, from leaving and becoming a restaurant chef, we see her sort of wind up in situations where she has a few people around her that are very, very supportive and in high enough positions that it helps her on her path to Top Chef, which was her first brush with stardom, where she got on Top Chef as a competitor in season 10 and made it about halfway through and got kicked off. But there was a mechanism in that show where she basically got to fight to come back, and she did, and wound up coming back to win the whole thing. And so that has been her major life-changing moment, really, that altered the course of her life as a chef to be much more in the public eye and to feel confident in doing that where she wasn't before. And so there was so much to this story about that, about her internal trajectory, much more than this celebrity aspect. But what was very cool was actually that I sort of set a lot of things aside this week that I had been working on watching and stuff. And I did actually start watching Top Chef season 10. It's on Netflix right now. It's one of the couple seasons that are there. And I had not actually seen the whole thing before. I'd seen clips and stuff of her. So I went through and was watching season 10 as I'm listening to her talk about all of it and all the relationships with the people on the show and the different situations that she got stuck in over the course of this. And yeah, it was such a great experience to have those side by side and be experiencing her memoir talking about Top Chef and the competition and the behind the scenes. It was cool. So I really enjoyed that. And then she does sort of wrap up with her coming out journey, which was very much after she already had fame. So on the show that she was on in the series of Top Chef, there was someone that was like a turning point moment for her on her season who was openly gay. And she realized how minor a thing it was for him to just sort of correct and clarify who he was very easily in that moment. And she was like, oh, this really wasn't a big deal. And it feels like that was the turning point for her sort of internally accepting that and beginning to process what would that mean if I externally did that. And so then she does start coming out. She starts dating and she has this wonderful, beautiful, loving relationship and gets married. And like that, I think, was the most beautiful moment of this story. You actually hear her breaking up on the audio and getting emotional, and just the love that she has for this relationship that she's built in her life was so beautiful. And being able to tell her family about it and just the ways that progressed, I loved hearing about. It's such a, like, it's a love story in the middle of this book about cooking. And it's such a great balance of things to bring together her personal side and her professional side. So yeah, and then of course it wraps up with the last couple of years, really, over the course of getting Iron Chef and Top Chef hosting jobs, and the sort of trajectory to now being primarily a TV chef over a restaurant chef, and just the success that she's had and the people around her who have supported her through all of it. And so I feel like she brought together a great sense of almost community in this book about the people that have been around her, more so than the successes that she's had. And that it wouldn't matter if she didn't have all of these successes, but I think it kind of would. That she just does have this great community of support around her through it all. Yeah, it was a very, very lovely book. So highly, highly positive, and I really recommend it. And of course, I really recommend Top Chef season 10. That was my watching update for this week. So in terms of books that I'm reading, I'm almost finished with my first BookTube prize book, thankfully. I picked a couple of really heavy ones to start with, so that's been rough, but finishing a book in about a week is a big success. So I'm happy that I finished one of the heavy ones. Hopefully we'll be done this weekend anyway. And as far as life stuff, not very much to talk about, pretty boring. Busy with work all week, really. Earl is doing very well. We transitioned him off of prescription food finally and onto regular food over the course of this week, and no problems. So Earl is my foster cat who has had some really bad digestive issues. That's why he's with me rather than at the shelter looking to get adopted, and he recently had a fecal transplant. So he has been doing so well after that. So we managed the food transition with 0 issues, and he's doing great. So hopefully that means he will be out the door soon to get adopted, which I'm gonna miss him, his nonsense. My cats are not going to, I don't think. They are ready for him to go. But he sure is cute. He's gonna be missed by me for sure. And then obviously, I guess the big thing from this weekend is the protests across the US. Protests in my area were very thankfully all peaceful and no real issues, despite our governor attempting to make it much more militarized than it needed to be. And massive, massive turnouts. It was so many more people than I would have ever expected. Really, it was just a very big turnout. So that is inspiring, exciting, good news, I hope. But unfortunately, I mean, we're going to have to pretty much keep it up if it's going to have any effect. So we will see. We will see if the pressure does anything. Yeah. And there have been a couple of other very heartbreaking aspects of news. There was assassinations in Minnesota. I mean, just the level of political conflict is very, very high in the US. So which I guess takes me to my recommendations for the week. So we'll start with the more serious of the two recommendations that I have. So the serious one is just a recommendation to check out Wicked Pluto, Wicked Reads, who did a very good video actually reading and emoting a bit about the facts of the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, and just kind of reflecting on how imminent a lot of things said there are to what's going on today. And so I very much enjoyed that. It was very much from a place of emotion, I think, and I appreciated the rawness of that. So I highly recommend checking that out because it was very of the moment and important, I think. And then the other one is a purely reflective on books and not related to anything political, but still really introspective and kind of heavy on the topic of where our reading priorities are, kind of, by Dr. Cranky Pants Reads. And sort of where we focus our attention when it comes to books in some degree, and why we do the things we do. And so I love that. It was a very introspective video essay, mainly. So definitely check out both of those videos. They're well worth your time, though they are a bit more on the serious side. So I think with that, I think I'm going to wind down there. It's been a challenging week, I think, all around. So I'm ready to wind down for the weekend, finish my BookTube prize heavy read, and go to something fluffier, definitely. So I don't know what that will be, but I'm definitely going to be getting into a fluffy read this week. So with that, I will say, I hope you have a wonderful week in reading and in life, and thank you so very much for watching.